The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 was one of the most significant events of the 20th century. But what caused it? Political corruption, economic inefficiency, and social unrest were all contributing factors. And today, we're seeing the same issues emerge again. Not only in Russia, but across the globe. From Washington, D.C. to Beijing, and even in the heart of Europe, these historical lessons are as relevant as ever. So, what can we learn from the fall of the USSR, and how are we repeating its mistakes today? This first video will be focusing on the political issues. The political problems of the Soviet Union were deeply rooted in authoritarianism, corruption, and centralized power. The Communist Party controlled every aspect of life in the USSR. Political power wasn't just held by a few. It was concentrated in the hands of the elite Communist Party officials, who controlled not just policy, but also the lives of millions of people. But beneath the surface, the centralized control created inefficiency and mismanagement that eventually caused the entire system to implode. As the years went on, the Soviet government became more and more disconnected from the needs of the people. Party officials lived in luxury, while ordinary Soviet citizens struggled with shortages, poor quality goods, and limited personal freedoms. This growing disillusionment undermined the regime's credibility. When people no longer trusted their leaders, the political system started to fracture. The government's loss of legitimacy was inevitable, and this contributed directly to the collapse of the USSR. Fast forward to today, in Russia, the Kremlin is led by Vladimir Putin, who has consolidated power through a mixture of political repression and centralization. Political opposition is often silenced through censorship, imprisonment, or outright violence. In fact, it is eerily similar to the methods the Soviet regime used to maintain control. Dissidents in Russia, whether they're journalists, activists, or politicians, are often persecuted. In the United States, the growing influence of corporate money and lobbying has led to many questions as to whether the system still represents the people. With Citizens United, the U.S. Supreme Court decision that allowed unlimited spending on political campaigns, we've seen corporations gain more control over policy than ever before. The reality is that American politics, just like Soviet politics, are increasingly dominated by the interests of a few elites. The average American citizen feels more and more alienated from the political process. The lesson here is clear. When the governments lose their legitimacy and become out of touch with their people, social and political instability will follow. And that is exactly what we're seeing today in both Russia and the West.